Funding for Texas Monthly Talks is provided in part by Public Strategies Incorporated, managing campaigns for corporations, around the clock, around the world. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a Texas financial institution serving large and small businesses, governments, schools, churches, and individual Texans just like you for more than 135 years. And also by Texas Mutual.
Sometimes the littlest ideas become the biggest innovations. That's true in your business and in ours. Texas Mutual Insurance Company, innovating workers' comp insurance for Texas.
And also by the Matson McHale Foundation, in support of public television. And by MFI Foundation, improving the quality of life within our community. And also by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation. And viewers like you. Thank you.
I'm Evan Smith, the editor of Texas Monthly. It doesn't seem possible that so many years have passed since the release of Urban Cowboy, but the seminal Texas movie that put mechanical bulls on the map arrived in theaters in the last year of Jimmy Carter's administration, which is to say all the way back in 1980. And that means the career of Debra Winger, one of the great American actresses of our generation, also amazingly stretches back that far, since her portrayal of Cissy, the love interest for John Travolta's character in the story based on Aaron Latham's now famous Esquire magazine article, was her first consequential role on screen. Born in Cleveland and raised there and in California, Winger graduated from high school at age 15 and went on to major in, of all things, criminology at Cal State Northridge. While working part-time at an amusement park, more specifically while playing a troll at Six Flags Magic Mountain, she was thrown from a truck and was partially paralyzed and temporarily blinded and lapsed into a coma. But over the course of 10 months, she recovered, after which time she quit school and started studying acting. Not your typical way into the business, but there's very little that's typical about the now 53-year-old's career, which has truly run the gamut. Her credits include, on the low end, a brief stint on TV as Wonder Girl, the sister to Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, and the soft-core film Slumber Party. On the higher end, where to begin? Besides Urban Cowboy, there's An Officer and a Gentleman, which earned her first Oscar nomination, Terms of Endearment, her second Oscar nomination, The Sheltering Sky, Leap of Faith, A Dangerous Woman, Shadowlands, her third Oscar nomination, and back on TV, most recently, Dawn Anna, for which she received her first Emmy nomination. She was also the subject of a much-talked-about documentary directed by Rosanna Arquette titled Searching for Debra Winger, about ageism in the movie business. Although we don't see enough of her these days, she remains one of the most accomplished and uncompromising Hollywood stars. And as you're about to see, a feisty, take-nothing-from-nobody interview. A conversation with Debra Winger on this edition of Texas Monthly Talks. Essentially do a version of that. This will be a fun night. Okay. I got the call. It's on the one. It's on PBS. Lewis. And then I stopped my show to get back to it, but it's okay. Hey, good. How are you? I'm fine. Can I run this? Hey, everybody, please take your seats. All right, good. Debra Winger, hello.
Hello, Evan Smith.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Let's begin by talking about why you're in town this week in Austin and in Texas. You are here for the Texas Film Hall of Fame.
I am. I don't know exactly what the prize is. I think it's getting out alive or making it this far or whatever.
Well, I think we're honoring you for your work in the great film Urban Cowboy.
There you go.
Right. When you think back to that film today, what do you think about? What are your memories of working on that film?
Well, you know, it was a big explosive experience for me because it was sort of my life or death experience. I mean, it was sort of do or die, and I really had my eyes opened about film, and Jim Bridges, who was the director, ended up being really my mentor. So, but from beginning to end, I went in pursuit of it, I got it, and I did it. And so it was a very strong message for the rest of my life. How
did you get the part in that film? Because you at that point in your career were really just on the way up. You had just done a little bit of stuff.
Yeah, no, I didn't even have an agent. I think I lied, cheated. I don't know what I did to get it, but the whatever I did to get into the office was all I really had to do, because Jim Bridges really championed me. He just decided that he wouldn't make the film without me.
You were right for the part.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, John Travolta's career was actually at a different place than yours was. He had just come. he had come off of Welcome Back, Kotter, and come off of Saturday Night Fever.
Right. We had a great time working together. It just seems like every story's been told. So,
yeah.
But I really, you know, the one thing that I guess I learned big time from him was that you made a choice out in the world of how you would be able to live when you became that big of a celebrity and your looks didn't change that much. And, you know, like he was definitely playing a character, but he's John Travolta, and that was a good thing for him because he's so full of talent as him, you know, just being himself, and he's a dancer. And but I do remember him saying, I wish I could just go somewhere the way you go somewhere, you know, like just...
Be anonymous.
Yeah, meaning, you know, like nobody goes somewhere.
Right.
But I said, you can, you know, and one night I dressed him down and we did everything different, you know, put on a different hat, we went in my car instead of his. And we went to this bar, and I could see him getting increased, and we were fine. We just walked in, and I could see that it's not comfortable once you're used to being who you are. You know, I'm always running those two sides. Like, what, you know, an actor is just, that's the job you do. So this whole thing about celebrity is very confusing. You know, it's not comfortable for everybody.
It doesn't define you in your own mind that's the person.
Not for me, but you know, I really admire people that are comfortable with it and can live easily with it, because, you know, then they can. For me, it's not easy.
Well, I want to jump ahead and stay on that subject for a second to today, because you've made a conscious decision these last number of years to live on the East Coast rather than in Los Angeles. And it's allowed you to have, by I think your definition, a normal life. It gives you space and gives you relative anonymity. You can go to the...
My kids would probably challenge the word normal.
Well, we'll talk about that. I mean, how normal do you think it is versus how they think it is?
Well, it's not average, but it's normal. I mean, insofar as, you know, they now go to school and, you know, they have schedules and they're not on sets, and I cook, and, you know, there's not a lot of people around, you know. We lived on a farm for a while, so, yeah, it's normal.
How do you feel about the business, since we're talking about the business these days, leaving aside whether you live in L.A. or New York? Do you feel like Hollywood's in a good place? Are you comfortable?
I don't have an idea of what Hollywood is anymore. I mean, if you look at the films, certainly if you watched the Oscars, you know, what is Hollywood? I mean, everybody thanked the Academy in a different language. A lot of the picture houses, a lot of the studios are housing independent, you know, branches that go out and do a lot of either negative pickup of films that are already finished by independent, you know. I mean, we would hope it's more than it is, but it's still enough that I don't know what Hollywood is anymore, because frankly, I don't go to see the movies that Hollywood makes. I haven't gone to see them for a long time.
When was the last, in your mind, Hollywood film, by your definition, that you were in?
Oh, God, this is like a test.
Well, while you're thinking about that...
Forget Paris.
Yeah, forget Paris.
Forget Paris.
The films that you've done, you have made such interesting... you passed the test. You've made such interesting choices that seem to conform to your sense of how this business ought to be. The films you've made have been...
Well, more so recently, and I'm about to do it really the way I want it to be. And Big Bad Love, the film I made with my husband, adapted from some short stories by Larry Brown, was really sort of how I see that sort of thrilling aspect of it, where you're just doing it from beginning to end. You know, Arliss wrote and directed and starred in it. I produced it and did a small role. And I mean, we're going to get better at the whole use of other people's money.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we need more of it, and to do the job we want, and also we needed to be able to have other people working on it as well. So we're about to do T.C. Boyle's, a movie based on T.C. Boyle's book, Drop City.
Oh, wow. And so, and your role on that film will be?
Actually, I have a bigger role in the film, so my producerial chores will be less. I'll probably executive produce. I line produced, if you know what the difference.
The distinction, sure.
Yeah, I actually worked on Big Bad Love, which was just frightening. I mean, that job is thankless.
Yeah. Did it give you an appreciation for all the people who you didn't understand?
No, I know now why they are so mean and awful. They are lying to everybody.
Is that what it is?
You know, equally. But
so they taught you what not to do as well as what
exactly.
to do. Yeah.
But that's why I watched them so carefully, and I thanked all of them after I did that film, because I knew I was paying attention for a reason.
Right.
So every time something faces itself, I say, you know, what would Jesus do? And he'd never do what any of those producers did. So.
The people you worked with at the crew level, or even at the high level, you know, directors and producers and so on, over the years, did you feel like you recognized them, yourself in them, or them in you? Were they not the directors you worked with on a movie like Urban Cowboy? You mentioned how Jim Bridges had been such a mentor to you.
Yeah.
Or in terms of endearment.
Did I recognize myself in the directors?
Did you see the directors as people who you could work with? You were comfortable with them?
Yeah.
They felt more like you than less like you?
No. But those are two separate things. I mean, I felt definitely I could work with them and that we were vastly different. Mm-hmm. Because if I felt that I was similar to my director, the way that I work is I would say I'm a director's actress. I really want to be directed, or let's put it this way, I want to be inspired. Mm-hmm. And I want to be pointed in the right direction, and I want to give it, I want the vision to be shared with me, and then let me go.
The best director you worked with in your career was whom?
Oh, I could not say best. I would say that Jim is closest to my heart, closest to my heart because he was, you know, the first.
Well,
that sounds so. Just take that out of context.
That'll be the promotion for the show, actually. Right, yeah, right.
Everybody will tune in.
Was An Officer and a Gentleman a good experience looking back, or not a good experience?
It was not a good experience making it, but not because of a lot of the reasons that have been said. I mean, the producers were, you know, hideous humans, and may they rest in peace. In fact, my story is about some of them, which I don't know why they would remain nameless now, except that they're dead. Right. Because I named them for years, but now that they're dead, it seems kind of cold of me.
Respect.
Yeah.
Right.
But my stories were the best ones about them.
Everybody else were even worse, actually. Yeah.
Because I would read these like magazines about some of them. You know, these stories, like especially after one of them died on his bathroom floor, and I would read these stories by other people. I'd say, "Oh, those poor people," and I'd forget completely how bad.
I don't have sympathy for this person.
Yeah. So it was a bad experience because the people in charge were not good people.
You told me that film was not expected to do.
No, they were shelving it. They only brought it out, I forget, something was happening in the business, so they said, oh, we're going to throw it out there. Right. They didn't have an ad campaign at first. They didn't, you know. So, you know, I think a couple people have admitted that they didn't know it was going to be.
But in the end, it was a huge...
Nobody ever knows.
Do you really think so?
Yes.
Do you know as an actor, when you go to work on a film, that you get a vibe, this one is going to be a big success?
You have a vibe. That's different than knowing. Yeah. They never know. Mm-hmm. You can sit in a screening, you know, the day before a film is going to be released that will be, you know, a blockbuster, and they don't really know. They'll say yes or they'll say no. I mean, you know, because how do you know? That's the magical aspect of it.
Well, the tastes of people change, and as you have said...
But it's also it's the time you're living in, what's happening in the news affects it, you know. Have glitter come out on 9/11, you know, I'm trying to find the most absurd example I can.
That's pretty good. But as you have said, though, there is something different about the movie-going experience today versus, say, 10 years ago with all the distractions. And so a movie that might have worked 10 years ago, maybe it doesn't work.
How many people text message while watching a film in this room? Oh, this is a good audience. This is a PBS audience.
Yeah, this is a good, respectful, film-loving...
Humans.
Film-going
audience.
Yeah. So it's hard to actually get people to focus on films the way that they did.
Well, I don't think that's totally. I mean, it's a fault of this, you know, sort of baloney that is, you know, this quasi-technology. Because I don't even like using that word for something like a BlackBerry. It's a wonderful technology, but what point is there to always taking yourself into this little thing instead of where you are, unless you're really bored with where you are. So that, so why spend your money to go to a movie if you don't want to be transported? But I would say that said, a lot of times you go in with the hope of being transported and it lets you down. So whip out the BlackBerry. But, it used to be pretty regular that you were transported.
On the subject of technology, one of the things that we had a laugh about the other day was the internet, that the fact that the internet disseminates all this information that may not be true. And you pointed out that the biographical information out there in the world about you is at least a quarter, if not more, false.
It makes life easy.
How's that?
Well, because you just, Jack Nicholson once said, "Don't deny anything, Bucky." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because if you deny one thing, then automatically everything else is true that you don't say anything about." So I just deny nothing. It's all true.
And so you don't mind that people may have an impression of you not knowing you or not?
Slept with all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that it? Actually, that'll be the promo. You know that. Well, it seems like a pretty...
Slept with all of them, and he was the first.
It's a pretty healthy attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it also is like, it's sort of what I tell my kids, if you don't lie, you don't have to remember as much.
So speaking of truth and speaking of celebrity and how all this goes, another thing I want to ask you to talk a bit about is your view of celebrity today, because the sort of younger versions of Hollywood who are constantly in the tabloids and constantly out there, we had a conversation about this, and you have some point of view that I think is very interesting on this.
Well, first of all, there is more to be out there in. I mean, there's just more magazines. Right. There's the internet. They're looking. It's like, have you ever watched the news and thought, how much of this did I really need to know? Like, there's just they have a 24/7 appetite. They can't be on the air and go, you know what? We're just gonna sit here for a little while. There's really nothing important enough to report. They're not gonna do it. They got the blue and red on and the makeup and they're ready to go. So they're gonna make news. And I think that it all sort of is eating its own tail constantly. It's just, you can hardly even break it up. When somebody dies, everybody goes, "Oh, isn't it terrible? We built them up, we tore them down, we killed them." And, but eventually that is the goal, is for them to die.
Explain.
No, when you start, it's like on a soap opera, when a character gets a cough, pretty much
time's
3-4
right,
weeks, better be looking for a new job. And I think it's the same with, you see the front page going, so-and-so has a whatever, rehab, then, back out. Then it's a kind of like being a caricature, So I don't know. And then they make a TV show about the actual thing. They now have ex-actors that used to be on series that got up, that now went to rehab, that now are on the show, Celebrities in Rehab. So you tell me what world you're living in that doesn't make you feel nuts. That makes me feel nuts.
So, but if I hear you talk about the media this way much longer, I'm going to get self-conscious. I'm going to think that.
Well, Jon Stewart does it every night, and everybody laughs, right?
Do you think he's funny?
I'll tell you, it really depends on how I feel. Sometimes it really makes me sad. But I think he's right about the media. I just think he fails to include himself.
Conveniently. Well, we all like to not include ourselves in those kinds of things.
But I think he's right about the media. I really do. And, it's pretty much, I don't know whether that show exists when Bush isn't president anymore, because he's just running clips. He doesn't even have to say anything anymore. The day that Cheney shot that guy in the face, I think they just showed, the press conference, and then they just cut back to Jon Stewart, and there were about 12 minutes of laughter, and he was just sitting there. Like that. So.
Pretty funny.
Right.
Come on.
So I think this election is that. I think you just y'all were very entertaining down here with your two-step vote caucus thing. hysterical.
Is it over yet?
Yeah.
And I'm not aware?
They showed traffic jams, people yelling up on tables with papers. We thought hanging chads was interesting. This was way better.
I think we actually haven't finished.
No, it's not finished.
They're still caucusing.
No, because now we're going to open up Florida and,
Michigan again, that's right. We have a couple minutes left. I want to go back to the beginning, and then I want to come forward to the end. Back to the beginning. Why did you...
God, it's an Einsteinian...
It is. Why did you get interested in acting to begin with?
That's not a good question.
Not a fun... Don't want to talk about that.
No, because it's just so long ago, as you know.
Well,
it was by accident. I did not plan on it.
The earliest role that you had was indeed, if the internet is not lying to me, as a troll at Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Would you call that a role? You mean the roll
Sort of.
off the...
You essentially were performing as at an amusement park. Right?
I actually was under this really uncomfortable bell-shaped costume that sat with aluminum things on my shoulders, and then I looked through the mouth. So the eyes were up here with a little hat, and there was netting in the mouth that I looked through, and I had these two sort of thalidomide gloves, where I didn't really have my arms, just put my hands in them, and then I had pink stockings and size 26 pink Converse high tops. And one day, has nothing to do with anything, but you got yourself into it.
Okay.
One day before long, before I was no longer there, it was very hot. It was 116 degrees.
Sounds unbearable, yeah.
And I got pretty cranky. I bet you can even imagine that.
No. Really?
And kids, especially at amusement parks, sometimes you see parents really at their, I hope it's their worst, but they sort of encourage their kids to be as obnoxious as possible. And at this point, the mother actually handed this little kid what are those combs called that you used to rat with? It has a pointy side, that you lift your hair with. Handed it to him so he could go, he's in here, he's in here.
Literally poking at you.
Poking it into, the mouth, where, of course, my eyes were like that. And then, when that didn't, bear fruit, he took his, it was a big bell-shaped thing. He took his snow cone that he was eating and threw it up my costume, and it caught me under the nose, and I temporarily lost my sanity, and I chased the child. I chased him.
Who would blame you?
I chased him for a pretty good distance up to a grassy knoll. And I fell upon him. And if not for the thalidomide gloves, I couldn't get my hands close enough together.
But you would have killed that child.
I might have had a different career.
Now, aren't you glad I asked so you could tell that story? What a great story. I have to clap in the middle of the show.
You can call. Now, Magic Mountain still exists, and that is because a lawsuit ensued.
Really?
Yes, that's correct.
Ooh. Just got less funny all of a sudden.
No, a lawsuit not by them. I sued Magic Mountain.
Oh. Now it got more
damages.
funny.
No, it got much more funny. I lived off of it for a while, but I'm not allowed at Magic Mountain. Well, I refer to it as Tragic Mountain or the Happy Hump.
The Happy Hump. You have a film that is in the can, as they say. Jonathan Demme directed that was called Dancing.
It was called Dancing with Shiva when I shot it, but evidently there was some confusion between the goddess of destruction and what Jews do when someone dies. So they changed it from Dancing with Shiva, which many thought was Dancing with... My hairdresser called me and said, "Hi, I'm from Dancing with Shiva." So they knew that wasn't
not going to work.
No. So I think it's called Here Today, which to me just is setting itself up for a sequel. But, that's... I don't know when that's coming out. Soon.
But we do know that you have a book coming out in June.
Yeah, it's a collection of writings that I've done over the years. Some are sort of observational. Is that a good way of putting it? So tell me. And it's about being a mother and a daughter, and it's about life and death. Not my breasts. It's not about my breasts. It's about life and death. I told him to read my shirt. We were in the green room. I said, you can ask me anything on these two subjects. And I went like this, and he got so nervous that...
I did.
He actually said life and peace, and I realized he could only read that one, and then he had to look away.
Well, I looked quickly, and then I looked right away, actually. That's exactly right. You're happy with where you are right now in your career and in your life? Think this is a good time for you?
No, I'd like to be working more, but the word happy for me is almost meaningless. I feel very enlivened by life right now, which I don't always. Sometimes I have a little gray cloud hanging over. But I feel really excited. I just want to find the right place for me to be so I can tell stories that are age appropriate and that are interesting to me. And I'm really anxious to work again, and I haven't been for a decade.
Okay. Well, whatever it is, we're glad to be part of it.
Thanks, Evan.
So great to see you.
Nice
Debra
to
Winger,
see you.
thank you so much. Good.
Funding for Texas Monthly Talks is provided in part by Public Strategies Incorporated, managing campaigns for corporations, around the clock, around the world. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a Texas financial institution serving large and small businesses, governments, schools, churches, and individual Texans just like you for more than 135 years. And also by Texas Mutual.
Sometimes the littlest ideas become the biggest innovations. That's true in your business and in ours. Texas Mutual Insurance Company, innovating workers' comp insurance for Texas.
And also by the Matson McHale Foundation, in support of public television. And by MFI Foundation, improving the quality of life within our community. And also by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation. And viewers like you. Thank you.